So I'm an educator, and I teach in higher education, and I have a PhD, and I'm not saying that because I'm
apologetic.
Yes, I am, a little. So the thing about that's so fascinating is I thought I would know a lot, and there's a lot to know, and so I don't know nearly as much as I thought I would having a PhD. And so when I think about how I teach...
Well, you know, you do know a lot, and you know a lot of specifics about some specific things. And now when you go back to fundamentals and come into complete alignment with who you are, and then focus upon the subjects that you've come to know from that place of alignment, what you know will blossom into so much more. In other words, that's what genius is.
I love that you said that. And what I mean is,
you've been following your path of least resistance all along the way. Don't misunderstand that you've been on your path all along.
I love that you said that too. So the thing that's so fascinating about this is higher education is supposed to be teaching a certain thing, and then when you're in the middle of that and you've got students who are looking at you and saying, okay, so how do I need to know, what do I need to know, how do I get the job, how do I and I don't like any of that anymore, right? And the topics that I teach crime and justice things. And so when you think about justice, the issue of focusing on where we are is what my colleagues and I study, where we are. And I've been watching so much.
Well, you'll get really good at that when you come into alignment with who you are, because then you'll have impulses and inspiration that will guide you from a broader perspective. But you do have the disadvantage of feeling like you need to bring others to justice.
Yes. And I think that when we focus on the idea of unconditional love, right? And
don't misunderstand what that means. In other words, in unconditional love, we're not asking you to look at something horrible and love it.
Agreed.
We're asking you to find love regardless of the condition, and then look at whatever you're inspired to see.
Yes. And so several things.
Would you say that the justice system is solution oriented?
Would I say the justice...
Conceptually, in other words...
And it's intentional and intended to be that, yes.
And so it's forward-looking in that way. In other words, it's misguided, as lots of things are, and it's judgmental, but then evaluating contrast is a judgmental thing too. We're not asking you to be without judgment. We're just asking you not to need something to be different in order for you to feel good, because if that's the case, then you know enough to know that you can never feel good knowing what you know.
And in fact, the process of contrast is required,
yes,
to bring people where they need to be.
Yes. And every movement has been steeped in what society wants to call criminality.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the idea of what a law is, I study criminalization.
A law is a standard and an ill-equipped and ill-effective attempt at controlling conditions so that masses can feel better.
And so when you think about what people want to talk about with what's wrong with that system, and I'm writing...
Everything.
Yes, and I'm writing a book right now, and I've been pounding this book out for years, and I keep coming back to, okay, where is the unconditional piece? Where could we go? Not where are we now, where can we go? Where can we go? Where can we be? How can we see this in a different way? How can we see this?
Ask of anyone who's participating with you, whether readers or collaborators, or ask society in general, what is the objective of the criminal justice system? What is its objective? What do we wish for? And what do you think would be the common outcry? What do we wish for?
Most people would say punishment.
Isn't that...
It's horrifying. To me it's horrifying.
But even though they might say that, that really isn't what they wish for. What they wish for is a better world.
Absolutely.
What they wish for is more moving about with less concern. What they wish for is more fairness. What they wish for is alignment. What they wish for is love. What they wish for is more love. But the reason that they would say punishment is because they are still conditional in their approach, because they really believe that they've got to control the conditions before they can feel good.
Absolutely.
So they got to control everybody that doesn't behave the way they want. And the thing that they ought to be scared of about that is that the enemies keep changing.
And mass incarceration tends to show
You
us.
think?
Yes.
You think?
So I love the idea of all of this, you know, you want to make a big impact in the world, or at least you're told you want to make a big impact in the world. And what I'm finding lately is,
If you want to make a big impact in the world, you got to hook up with big impact
there
stuff.
it is, right? And so that brings us back to that kind of fundamental place. I love just, sometimes you think that you're looking for a particular path and something happens and you think,
And looking for a particular path because.
thank you. So you talk about the vortex, and I used to think I need to get over there, and then you would say you can't get there from here, and then I'd be confused because wait, I want to be in the vortex.
That's
and
why
it's
we
over there.
started talking about your point of
Yes.
attraction and your grid.
Yes.
Everything comes to you.
And I love that, because when you say, okay, so something happens and I'm on my path and I can't get off my path, so the vortex is over here, but now I'm on my path, and so now I know the vortex is on my path.
Yes, and accepting that you're always on your path.
Yes.
And so you always have the option of making it easier for yourself or harder for yourself.
Yes, and I love that, because when you think about, I had something happen and it didn't think about it like it happened. Like, let me say that differently. So I wanted something, I thought I found that thing I wanted. It wasn't anything like I thought it should be. And then all of a sudden I started seeing it differently, and I started watching it unfold, and it was exactly what I needed.
Because your perspective keeps changing.
Yes, and
So we have a question for you.
Sure.
Let's not talk about how you got to this point in time. Let's say you're there. We're talking about any of you. And you've got a gun in your pocket.
I don't like guns.
Let's say you do, because of whatever came before.
Okay?
And someone accosts you in the parking lot.
Yeah.
And they are pointing their gun at you.
Yeah.
Is it your path of least resistance to just let them shoot you? Or is it your path of least resistance to defend yourself?
So I love that you asked me that question, because that is probably the biggest question I have. Because if I would say to you, okay, so hi, nice to meet you. I knew you were coming. I called you to me. You know, this is the path of allowance, right? But I don't want to die is another, you know, this isn't what I thought would be happening.
So as you're standing there in that moment in time,
Yeah.
is it necessary for you to take into consideration everything that has brought you to that point, or are you simply to take your path of least resistance? And if you do, could it make you a criminal?
And so I think yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's prudent to not let it get that far before you get control of your point of attraction. But there are a lot of people that don't know anything about their point of attraction. They're just doing their best. They're following their path of least resistance. And in the eyes of source, in the eyes of unconditional love, they're just following their path of least resistance. It's just people that want to put it into categories of right and wrong.
Yeah.
you
I had a
see.
friend give me mace for my birthday last year, right? And I love that, because I don't need mace. I said to her, I don't need mace. And she's like, oh, but there's so many dangers in the world. I'm like, stop talking. I don't want to hear that, right? And they think I'm crazy, and I love that in the world that I work in, because you got to document everything, right? Well, I don't have documentation for any of the, you know, some of the things we're talking about, but I love, it just feels right. It just feels
Well,
good.
you've got this vibrational cloaking device. You don't need mace. You've got a
I know.
vibrational cloaking device.
She didn't like that answer, by the way, because I said something similar to that. As I think about the criminal justice system, and as I think about social change, and as I think about all these big, big things,
Criminal justice system. Let's think about those words. Criminal justice.
I know. System.
Yeah. So now, do you need this contradictory entity to be different in order for you to find alignment?
Well, I wanted to ask if that whole process was what was necessary to bring me into alignment, because I feel more aligned now
Maybe.
than ever before.
Maybe, but let's look at it, because you're looking to make the world a better place. That's why you entered into it. You are an uplifter, wanting to help out in whatever way you can. And so in the same attitude that we were talking about, the ones that are hard being the gift to help you to discover who you really are, could this whole system not be an entity like that, that is hard, but out of it is coming desire that ultimately will leave the society in a better place than it's
Social
ever been before?
transformation.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I
all
think,
is well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Our work here is done.
It's going to be a good book.